Greetings, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing well, Carl. How are you?
Things are great. Great. This is episode 147, or what episode is this?
No, I think we're just I'm gonna put that in air quotes. We're just on episode 22. So
Feels
22 is still a pretty good milestone. It means we're coming up on the 6 month mark since we basically do these every other week now.
yeah, very good. Very good. I have been noticing on because I stalk you that you've been traveling a lot, right? Like it's like is this what we call conference season?
Yes, it's conference season. So our industry is, I don't know, at least from the speaker's end, like disturbingly cyclical in its conferences. We cram all these events in after tax day, right? Because you can't get anybody out during tax season. So as soon as April 15th passes, there's about an 8 week conference sprint until mid to late June. And then school's out, whatever county you're in, everybody goes on summer vacation. All conference activity stops for July and August. Then, as soon as you get past Labor Day and everyone's back in school, conference season, game on again. 10 weeks of crazy until you get to essentially mid November. And then no one runs a conference into Thanksgiving, and then no one runs conferences through the end of the year because you're in holidays. And so something like 70% of my travel for the year comes in about 3 months, a month and a half right after tax day, and a month and a half to 2 months right after Labor Day.
Wow. So you guys because I followed all that stuff going on, Well Stack and XYPN Live and all of that stuff going on everywhere, right?
Yep. This is fall conference season.
Okay. So travel is what we want to talk about then. Because I am curious about, I don't love the word hack, but I'm curious about travel hacks. How do you make that amount of travel tolerable?
Honestly, the first thing is just keeping it as simple as possible. I get no small amount of grief for like the whole blue shirt thing, but in all seriousness, travel gets a lot easier out of the gate when you don't have to think about what you're packing. I just grab the suits and 5 more blue shirts because there's 12 in the closet. So 5 for the week and then 5 to throw in the laundry while I grab the other 5 for the next week, whatever I'm traveling. The packing's always the same. The clothes are the same. It's a wonderful simplification, but it really does take some of the mental load off. When you do a lot of travel, you just quickly get to the point where you own 2 of everything. So there's no packing a travel bathroom bag. It just has the toothbrush and the toothpaste and the soap and all the stuff. It just lives in a bag that I just have to remember to refill when I run out of toothpaste. And so I've essentially got the Go travel bag that already has all the stuff it needs. The clothes rotate. It's always the same clothes. And what it means in practice is, particularly since I live relatively close to the airport, I don't even start packing until an hour and a half before the flight. And then I just throw all the stuff in the bag and hop in the car and drive over to the airport in about 12 minutes and go through and I'm done. And so that level of simplification actually helps a lot to just not make travel such a big ordeal. For me, it's just a slightly longer version of a commute that involves a car and an airplane instead of just a car or a train locally.
Right. It's interesting. Whether you travel a lot or not, this idea of having documented systems for things that you have to do continue. I'm so fascinated by the cognitive load of our business that any place where I can eliminate cognitive load. And my wife, she doesn't understand why the closet looks very similar. There's a lot of just of the same stuff in the closet because I don't want to think about it. I mean, I'm not as crazy as you. Are they literally the same shirt?
Yes, I literally buy them 12 at a time. They'll last, a year or a few because I'm pretty hard on my clothes since I travel a lot. And then I'll go out and buy another set of a dozen and rotate the old threadbare ones out and restock with some new ones that are nice and crisp and fresh blue because they haven't been, machine wash faded yet.
Yeah. Okay. So it's literally the same thing. That reduces cognitive load, keeps things simple. I had a friend, his name was Veron, and he was a PhD engineer, and he didn't travel as much as you, but he had this policy that anytime he had to do something a second time, he was going to write down what he did. Right. So instead of having the bag already packed, there was a flashcard that sat somewhere, that he would go, oh yeah, that's right. When I leave for business trips, I just check these 7 boxes. Right. So what else?
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'd say, so one distinction I'd actually make to this, I don't try to just sort of create whatever you want to call it, a standard process and procedure that's written down. For me, it's actually one step beyond that.
Right.
It's make it such a routine habit. You don't even have to think about it. You don't even have to think about whether you've checked all the things off on the list.
Right.
It's just habit because it's always the same, right? If anything deviates from the habit, then you got to think about it.
Yeah.
If you make a thing that's so consistent that it becomes a habit you don't even think about, it becomes much more manageable and much easier to deal with because you just literally don't have to think about it. Like I don't have to put any thought into gearing up for travel until it's an hour and a half before the flight. And it's like, oh yeah, time to rotate the clothes in the bag and off we go.
Right. But granted, you do travel more than most.
Yes, I do travel more than most, which means I've repeated these things enough that it gets a little easier to make it a habit because I literally do it enough that it becomes a fairly ingrained habit.
Yep.
But there is a distinction to it that I do see people do in a lot of contexts, and I pretty deliberately try to avoid in a lot of contexts, which is even making checklists for repeatable things. Like I'm a fan of checklists just to try to remember stuff, but the goal is to ingrain it into a habit to the point that you don't have to remember your checklist at all.
Yeah.
And if you constantly change your routines and mix things up, you have to keep relearning them. You never get habits. Then you have to think about whether you're on the new routine or the old routine or the new habit or the old habit or whatever it is. And that's when your brain gets really tired really fast.
That's really,
and it becomes much more exhausting to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. But we do have, and you and I know some of these advisors that are sort of location independent advisors. They travel, like Sophia, right? Like traveling.
Yep.
And they've figured out how to, even though they're going to be in different locations or different places, they've figured out how to create habits that allow them to still be incredibly productive.
Yep.
Because I'm always like, if I could just get the garden completely weeded, then I could relax. And it's taken me 30 years to figure out the garden's never completely weeded, right? Like you just need to relax now and deal with the fact that there's going to be some weeds every once in a while. But and I know people who have gotten their lives so habitual that I look at their lives and I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. But they look at my life and say, wow, it's so exciting, so much fun. So it's anyway. So what about physical? What do you do? Well, 2 things. What technology do you use to track travel? Like, where does all this stuff exist? What flight am I getting on? Have you had this experience? I know you have. I used to literally show up at the airport and go, okay, where am I going? Right. And have to.
Oh yeah. When you travel a lot, that whole phenomenon of like, oh, it's Tuesday, I must be in Dallas, is very true and real. Like again, it's simple for me. I go where my phone tells me to go.
Right.
Google Calendar knows all and has all information, and Google Calendar tells me when my flight is, and that's where I go. And Google Calendar tells me where my hotel is at the other end, and that's what I hit the button for and copy and hit the Google Map button and queue right up to go there.
So you don't use like TripIt or Kayak, or you use everything's in Google Calendar.
No, everything's in Google Calendar.
Okay.
just so I can keep it all completely, always, unequivocally in one central place, right? Because that's, what flights am I taking and what hotel am I going to and what phone calls am I doing on the road and which time zone am I doing the call from to make sure that I actually get on the call at the right time, and when is that session and where do I need to be. So again, in the spirit of like simplify, or not even just simplify, but like simplify and habitize. Is that a word? Habitize? Like it all lives in one place.
Okay. Okay.
So I don't have to think about where it is because I know where it is. It's all in one place.
So you book a flight, the confirmation comes. How does it get into Google Calendar?
The moment I buy the flight and finish buying the flight, I just copy the confirmation information straight into Google Calendar
and create
literally when I buy
the appointment with the time zone starting in one and ending in the other place, like that whole trick.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Physically, what do you do to, this is brutal for all of us, but do you have any sort of like travel health tricks? Do you get on the plane and immediately put an eye mask over and try to sleep? Do you what little tricks do you use?
No, sadly for me, the moment I'm on an airplane is just like, can we please get up in the air to 10,000 feet so my Wi-Fi will turn on? Because I need to finish all those emails that I couldn't do while I was boarding the plane. Work for me is pretty hectic these days, just with all the different businesses and all the different stuff that I juggle. So ultimately, for me, the biggest issue is just actually getting my sleep, and notwithstanding all the good natured humor jibes I get about whether I actually sleep or not. I really do sleep. I really am I need my 8 hours. And if I don't get my 8 hours, I feel it, immediately, and it goes downhill pretty quickly for me. And so just making sure no matter where I'm going and what I'm doing, that I get my sleep and that I try to honor my sleep cycle, which I'll admit as the years go by and I get older, I adjust less well to time zones than I used to. And so these days it's a lot of like, I'm in California, so I'm pretty much going to be going to bed by about 9 or 9:30, and I'm going to be waking up at 5 or 5:30, but that's what I've got to do to get my sleep.
Yeah. So you're not just joking with us. You get 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Because that was a question.
Yeah, for a while I was actually posting my Fitbit logs online just to prove it.
Were you really?
Yeah.
That was the question. I think that's what Ron Lieber wanted somebody to ask you was, how do you keep up with that amount of content? No, it was something around that. So sleep.
Yeah. I really do get the sleep. I just don't have much social life. I play with my children and I do a lot of work and I sleep.
Yeah.
That's like these days.
So you arrive at the hotel after a flight. Do you make any adjustments to the room, like temperature wise? Do you decide to unplug things? Do you do any of the Tim Ferriss stuff?
No, although now I really want to know what the Tim Ferriss routine is. Apparently I'm under preparing my room.
Yeah. There's a whole between Tim Ferriss and Ben Greenfield. A whole sanitize your room sort of, and I don't mean like sanitize, but sleep hygiene. So when you get there, do you avoid turning on the computer after a certain time?
No, not really. I actually tried to do that for a while, and just sometimes there's too much stuff to keep up with, and depending on whether the flight had Wi-Fi or not, I may or may not need to catch up on some emails when I land at the other end. So flat bans on no computer, after I get to the hotel just didn't always work in practice. Obviously, at some point I got to unplug just so I can actually get into the bed and fall asleep. But short of that, no, I'm still a device up until the end. I do at least have some of those apps for both the laptop and my phone that cuts off the amount of blue light that comes off from the screen, which helps a little bit for sleep cycles if you do end out looking at your computer devices a little bit later in the evening. And so I got apps on both to hopefully have my electronics slightly less screw up my sleep cycle.
Yeah. Okay, what else? What's your favorite little travel hack?
Again, for me, like making the travel manageable all just comes down to getting systems in place that you just know you're going to be able to do what you need to do when you need to do it. So standard packing, standard, toiletries bag. The bag is always packed the same way with the stuff in the same location. The right things are always in the right pockets. Not because I'm like anal retentive about it, but just because when the things are always in the right place, I never have to think about it. And I've got enough other things to think about that I don't need to think about things like, oh, did I remember to bring my vitamins, or where is that charger that I can't find that I need to plug in? Like, I know where the charger is. It's in the same pocket. I don't even have to think about it. I just always grab it there, and I always put it back there when I'm done. So that process of putting everything down to a habit where you don't have to think much about it is helpful, right down to the fact that I carry around a separate mobile hotspot. So anytime I turn on my computer, it instantly connects and I'm instantly on the internet. I don't have to go searching for a Wi-Fi connection or get the Wi-Fi password from whatever conference I'm at. Notwithstanding the fact there's also some information security issues with logging onto random open Wi-Fis, but always carrying around a mobile hotspot. So like I never have to think about internet connections and finding how I'm going to get connected. I carry a thing around. It's got a full day's battery. I plug it in when I go to sleep and I put it in my bag when I wake up, and I've got internet for the day without needing to think about it. I'm just constantly amazed at how often people like don't simplify the systems around them, and they have to spend a lot of mental energy thinking about things that will not actually advance your life and improve your business for what in the grand scheme of things is a very modest amount of money as a business expense. I'm a walking internet connection with my bag, and I never have to think about it. It's just always there. And it only has to save me about an hour of productivity a month, and it pays for itself 3x or more.
Right. Yeah, I think that switch between you get at some point like you're like, wait, I mean, at least for me, it was like, why am I always running around trying to figure out where that thing is? Just buy another one, right? You're like, I don't want to spend the $50. No, spend the $50, right? Not an expense, an investment in my own sanity, probably an investment, period, like with an actual lot.
Yeah, I mean, even for people that don't travel a lot, like the number of times I've been at a conference and I see an advisor walking around saying like, oh my God, does anyone have a power cord that fits this particular model of Dell, or like this, my MacBook Air? At least there's probably someone else there with the MacBook Air that can lend you a power cable. But like, I forgot my power cable. I forgot to grab the one off my desk and pack it in my bag. And all I could think is like, dude, the average advisor does pretty well. Buy a second cable and put it in your bag, and then you never have to remember to grab the cord from your office and put it in your bag, because the fact that you forgot, at the rate you bill your clients, you are losing an ungodly amount of money by not just buying a second cord so you don't have to think about it. Right? It's those same kinds of scenarios. Like we create these extra cognitive loads on ourselves, don't even think about it, inevitably can't possibly remember everything if you make yourself have to remember everything, and then lose productivity, lose opportunities because we created these impediments for ourselves. And so a lot of what I do is just try not to create those impediments. At least if I'm going to screw something up, it's because I was focused on it, not because I made myself remember a whole bunch of things that I can't possibly remember because I juggle way too many balls.
Awesome. That's been super helpful for me. These are questions I've got more, but I think we'll save them for another time. Like the number one thing I wanted to uncover was, were they actually the exact same brand of shirt? And now that we know that, I think the rest of us can sleep.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like, yeah, I buy the shirts 12 at a time, and now we've got like matching Kitces blue socks. So I buy the socks a dozen at a time from boldsocks.com.
Amen. Thanks for sharing that, Michael.
Amen.
All right, man. Have a great day.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Carl.